It's great to have our featured speaker here, Peter John Ross, because he actually presented a film at the very first film festival that we put together. Andrew Jones actually put this thing together, and Peter John put a film, submitted it. The Horrors of War was a great feature. I think it's gotten some fair acclaim throughout the years. And then he'll also present two of his films as part of the presentation. So I think with that, let's bring out Peter John Ross.
Want me up there? Can everybody see me down here? Because I'll just stay right around here. Yeah, I'm an independent filmmaker from Columbus, Ohio, which really isn't nearly as glamorous as that might even sound. I've been making films for about 11 years now. I was a licensed broker until I was fired for making movies on the premises, making fun of working at a bank. I started with short films kind of online, I wouldn't say, as some websites have said, I spearheaded it. I was just part of that initial movement with others that were making short digital videos and putting them on the internet. From there I developed, doing more short films, longer short films, and eventually I did make a feature film on film, which is Horrors of War, that played here in 2006. For me, I never went to film school. I'm entirely self-taught, and this was before there were all these free tutorials on YouTube existed. I learned by doing. For every short film I made, I set a goal of something to learn and tried to learn it by doing, even if I learned by making mistakes, which I made many of those. And if you see some more of my work, you'll blatantly see those mistakes on screen. But that's actually an important part of the process for me, is actually sitting in a dark room with a bunch of strangers is why I make movies. It's that chance to have the unadulterated response to what you put on screen. And there's something about the psychology of it, which is that, a group of people affect each other. Has everybody here heard the phrase that laughter is infectious? Anybody ever heard that before? That's never more true than in a movie theater. Because sometimes you might think something's funny, but if you're the only one in the room laughing, you feel embarrassed and you're not inclined to laugh anymore. And the basic purpose of any movie, whether it be a 30-second commercial or a 4-hour director's cut of Titanic, the purpose of any movie, and regardless of format or what you shot it on, the purpose of a movie is kind of to manipulate the audience. You're trying to get people to think or feel something they weren't when they sat down to watch it. In the case of a commercial, you're trying to sell a product. In the case of comedy, you're trying the hardest thing in the world, which is to make someone laugh. And laughter is an involuntary convulsion, but a good one. So it's the hardest thing in the world to try to do, and the best way to learn it is to make movies, put it out there, get it seen, and get that reaction. And so, kind of what I wanted to show tonight was kind of where I'm at today as a filmmaker, from what, the culmination of my 11 years of being self-taught kind of put me where I'm at in 2011. And kind of the demonstration I want to do is kind of the difference in the sizes of kind of crew. So the first piece I want to show is a 5-minute short film called Accidental Art. It was shot on the really expensive Red camera. It has a crew of about 27 people on set, and several people worked on it in post. But then the next thing I want to show are the brand new things that I'm kind of world premiering here before I put them online, which are the cell phone monologues that have a crew of 3 and 1 person in post doing effects. Although I did have an editor, I had an intern who actually did the edits, but I supervised the edits with her and I did all the effects work for it. And so right now I just want to kind of show these couple short films and then tell you a little bit about it afterwards and take some questions afterwards and everything. So let's go ahead and play these things.
It looked like it was getting really hot on the roof. Thought you could use a break.
Nice, cake.
It's my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Artie didn't even remember my birthday.
I remembered. And I got you this.
That's really thoughtful.
Yeah, well, you know, you said you've been painting and you were having some trouble, so I got you a brush.
Thanks, it's great.
So, do you have any of those paintings around? Because I'd kind of like to see some of your work, you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah?
They're upstairs in my bedroom. I can show you if you want.
Yeah. You know, last time we didn't even make it upstairs.
And once again, a big thank you. You're listening to Mark Mount.
That was...
I know. I know.
I need something.
Hey, have, you seen my belt?
Isn't it still on your pants?
Oh, yeah. Hey, I don't have to be at my next job until 5 p.m., so if you want to take another ride on the J train, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You're insatiable.
No, I'm not. I got tested for that. Ms. Rogers?
Yeah?
What exactly does your husband look like?
About 5'10", black hair, brown eyes, kind of a watermelon head. Why do you want to know about Artie?
I was just wondering if he's standing right in front of me.
Happy birthday.
Oh, God.
So was that your husband?
Oh, no. No.
Was it?
Of course it was!
Whoa,
How could you do this to me?
Artie, what are you doing?
After all that I've done for you, I can't believe this.
What did you expect? This is not a marriage. You're never here. You're always working.
Then why do you think that is, huh? You wanted to quit your job so that you could do your art full time. You haven't painted anything in 10 months. And you want to know the worst part about all of this?
What?
I'm paying him for this.
Don't play the victim to me. You love that job.
I hate that job. We have a mortgage, 2 car payments, and I was doing it because someone had to pay the bills. I was doing it to keep us afloat, to make you happy, so that you could try. I mean, really try to paint.
Really?
Yes. I do it all for you. I love you.
Artie.
Hey, honey, it's me. I just got off work a little early and I wanted to see what you wanted to do about dinner. We never get to see each other anymore since you got your promotion. I know I've not been in the best of moods here the past few months. I'm just in a funk, you know? I just don't want you to think that this is the beginning of a pattern, but the end of one, you know? I have not been acting depressed all the time, just some of the time. But you have to realize that this is just the first step. No, I know you've been telling me for weeks that I have been grumpy, but I know I have not gone with you to your mother's and Todd's house in over 2 months, but that is because he's a smoker and she hates me. Yes, she does! What does that mean? I should have gone anyway. How did... How is that supporting you? How is being called a liberal and then being constantly compared to your ex-boyfriend by your mother, how is that supporting you? I mean, tell me. How is that supporting you? Am I an idiot? That's insane! All right. Fine. All I wanted to do was to go out and have a bite to eat. I just wanted to do something special, you know? Just us. You're working late. No. With your new job comes new responsibilities. Yeah, we'll talk about it then. Yeah, I'll see you about 9. All right. Bye.
So that's just a little sampling of kind of the things I've done in the last year or so, year and a half. Again, comparatively speaking, it's like the quality, the picture quality. I mean, I had the same cinematographer for all 3 of those, Greg Sabo. And, but we used 3 different cameras and 3 completely different level, you know, or at least 2 different levels of crew. For that first one, Accidental Art, I had a very large crew. We had a crew of, 27 on set, plus 3 actors. And most of them were actors I'd worked with before. So basically, with Accidental Art, part of the thing was, I really wanted those smooth dolly shots. So that meant getting a really nice dolly, a dolly grip, a cameraman, and that camera was a large camera that required a focus puller. So right there, the camera department has expanded quite a bit. The other thing was the house we shot in was actually empty. So I had to have an art crew that would populate it with furniture and the cake and everything else. And it was something I wanted to do a lot more with in terms of that polished look, so it required a bigger crew. But then with the cell phone monologues, really I was like, I want that same kind of look, but I wanted it handheld. We used a DSLR camera, the Canon 5D, and the operator could do it all himself, focus, pull, and do everything himself with one handheld unit. So the needs of the shorts and the stories determine the size of the crew. I mean, I know far too many people that they want the small crew because they're rebels, they're indie film guerrillas, and they don't want to have a big crew. And then I know people that are like, I want to have a huge crew, even if it's one person in a room alone talking. They want to have 30 people there because they like to boss people around. And unfortunately, I'm not one of those. I mean, I like it when I get to boss people around, but it's not necessary to make a movie every time. So, I mean, for me, I'm not real big on the dog and pony show just to have a dog and pony show. If the story doesn't need it, I tend not to want to use it. So, again, for me, it should always be about story is king. You should have something to say. And even at this point of doing this for 11 years, I'm still learning how to tell stories with the camera and with actors and with the words that are written. And so a lot of times I may not know what editorial choice I want to make until it's played for an audience. I might want to make a change if I feel like the story didn't get across the way I wanted. So it's a perpetually learning experience to make movies, and in this era with the cameras that we have out there, and with more or less the death of film in the last couple of years and in the next few years, there's going to be less and less stuff shot on film. Kodak's stock has plummeted to around $1 a share. Then you have Aeroflex and 2 other companies have decided they're no longer going to make motion picture film cameras, only digital cameras. So the opportunity to shoot on film is going away. So at this point in time, anybody can make a movie, but not everybody can make a movie well. Something I hear all the time is, what qualifies people to make a movie today is, well, I've watched movies my entire life. Well, guess what? I listened to Jimi Hendrix my whole life. That doesn't qualify me to go into a guitar store, pick up a Fender Strat, and play like he did. So I don't know why people feel watching a movie qualifies them to make it. Because, of course, 11 years ago, just so you know, I'm actually, when I get angry and yell about this stuff, I'm talking to myself from a few years ago, because that's how I felt, that's how I was. And I wish somebody would have smacked me upside the head and said, you're an idiot, practice, practice, practice. And that's actually what I've been doing, but I'm a lot less arrogant about it now than I was then, because I'm perpetually learning. I always want to strive to do better. So again, the purpose of these also, it really had nothing to do with the size of the crew, but it did have to do with also the intent of the projects. Accidental Art, even though that's kind of a self-contained story, that's the first 5 pages of a feature film script that I'm going to be producing most likely later this spring. And so it's the setup for a story, but I also wanted to be able to go to investors with something to show this is what it's going to more or less look like. And so I wanted it to be more polished. And I wanted it to have those smooth dolly moves. I wanted to have art direction to where decisions were made about the colors of people's clothes for emotional reasons that relate to the story, like who is this person? With a cell phone monologue, it was really more about the actor's performance and camera work. So I didn't need a big crew to tell those stories. They were very simplified. It's a single actor saying a monologue. So I didn't feel like I needed the big crew for all of that. And, you know, to have a big crew for that would have just been about, hey, look at me, I'm a big shot. And that's not what it was about. That's not actually the story I'm trying to tell. It's about me, me, me. It's about, you know, other people, fake characters, and things I want to say about, you know, relationships and people. So, with the state of things as they are with the indie film movement, it's a tough time, and it's a great time. With things like the DSLR, you have that shallow depth of field where you could rack focus like I did, where you could see where, you know, part of his ear is out of focus, but his eyes are in focus, or go from like holding up a paintbrush to a woman's face. Those are storytelling tools that used to be exclusive to film. Now, for a few $100s, anyone can have that. So all the storytelling tools of film are now in the hands of digital. But also, you have 100,000 times more people telling those stories and having it look very good. How do you make yourself stand out? I don't have the slightest clue. All I can say is just try to tell a story and make it a story that you care about, and the more often you do it, maybe the better you'll get at communicating that with other people. I mean, success is something that you define for yourself. But one of the greatest things about these tools, as you can see here, is about kind of the digital effects. Did anybody notice how there was a window in that cell phone monologue that the camera kind of just went right through the glass? Anybody see that? Well, here's the first attempt at that I did. It really only took about 45 minutes of my time to do this effect total with all the versions. So here's the first attempt. I took the image of the actor and made a still of it, and made, you know, a cheap window, motion tracked it in, and we traveled through it. Part of selling it was desaturating what's supposed to be inside the bar. The irony is that was everything shot with that horrible fat actor on the left and then that beautiful woman. That was shot 7 months later. If you didn't know, that's me up there on the left, which is why I'm calling him fat. Hopefully it'll motivate him to lose weight. But But that was my first attempt where I just took one of those handheld shots of the actor, made a still of it, then motion tracked it into another handheld shot, which was kind of counterintuitive, but it seemed to work. But I didn't feel it looked right. I didn't feel it was good enough, so I tried it again for another 15 minutes and came up with something more like this. The joke there is I have a series of fake, horrible children's show called Uncle Pete's Playtime, so it's kind of an inside joke for me. And he's still fat. I couldn't fix that with computer-generated imagery. I tried as hard as I could. I couldn't make him look thin. But basically, things like that, the option was I was looking for a bar that had a giant window out front, and then we'd have to light the inside and the outside and do all that exposure and change focus. When I couldn't find the bar, I decided I'll do it in the computer. And I did. I found a tutorial on the internet for free, watched it for 30 minutes, tinkered with it for 20 minutes, did the first version, tinkered for another 20 minutes, and then I had that final one. It's absolutely amazing what is available to us for free on the internet. We live in the information age. The difference between what a big TV network or a movie studio can do and what we can do, that gap has narrowed quite a bit. But it's a pretty abysmal time in terms of making money, in terms of like feature films. From where we were 5 years ago with Horrors of War, which is released internationally. I mean, it's called Dead Man Soldiers in Japan, it's called Zombies of War in England, Nazi Zombies in Sweden, and I'm not sure what other names they're going to come up with, but I'm sure they will. Where things were at with the industry then is not even taking into account the internet with bootlegging and downloading it illegally. Put that on the side. The reality of the business of where it's at now with feature films is there's just not a lot of money out there. 5 years ago, what you would do is you would sell 1 or 2 copies to every Blockbuster in America. And you'd, between that, Hollywood Video, and all the other mom and pop stores, you could sell 50,000 to 75,000 DVDs just with that. Similar with retail, with the big 3 retailers for DVDs, Best Buy, Target, and Walmart. If they carried 10 copies at every store, there's 100,000 DVDs you've sold. In 5 very short years, that entire business model has been eradicated. For rental, Hollywood Video is out of business. The mom and pop stores are all closing. There's Redbox, which will not carry an independent film. Then there's Blockbuster, that has 33% the number of stores that they had 5 years ago. And they don't even want to carry the 1 copy of an indie title. They'll say, we'll put it on Blockbuster Online, or Netflix. Does anybody know how many copies Netflix buys on an independent film to cover the entire North American continent, Canada and the US? 36. 36 copies. So you went from 50 to 75,000 copies to 70. Similarly with retail, Best Buy, Target, and Walmart will not dedicate shelf space to 10 independent film titles when they could stock it with extra copies of Star Wars or Spider-Man 4. Which one's more likely to sell? The big name product. And they say, we'll put it online. They're going to buy how many copies for each for Best Buy Online, Amazon.com, and all of those? Between 20 and 100 copies. So combined, you went from 100,000 DVDs to a couple hundred. It's a fraction the number of titles out there. I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but those are just the realistic numbers that we're facing right now. So that entire business model doesn't exist the way it did even 5 years ago. It's just not there. Similarly, for international, distribution is, in a lot of ways, the DV revolution of being able to shoot it at your own has affected the business as well. You could compensate by DVD sales to those countries. The problem is they all now have a laptop and a DSLR, and instead of buying a crappy American independent film like Horrors of War, they're going to make their own in their own language and edit it themselves in HD and release it. And that's what's happened to that business model. And to get even with them, I'm downloading the torrents of their movies too, so they make less money. But it's not working out so good because I don't understand what the movie's about. But yeah, that's kind of the state. But I mean, what's the future going to hold? I'm not 100% sure. I think there's things like, there's the business model of the web series like The Guild. If anybody here ever heard of The Guild? It's a series about people who play online video games like World of Warcraft. And I think the future successes are gonna be in that kind of thing of niche marketing. It's gonna be about catering to a specific audience, making stories about a specific group of people that they can all relate to. It still comes down to story. It still comes down to how well do you communicate your idea. But for financial success, it's going to be niche marketing. It's going to become funding through alternative sources. It's about some form of product placement. I think things are going to get a little more regionalized. If you have a popular web series in a particular city, maybe you feature the pizza box of a pizza place that supports the cause. And maybe if that increases any level of business for them, they'll want to invest in the next project. But I don't think we're going to see the numbers we saw 5 years ago again. I don't know how to compensate for that, but we can all try. So on that wonderfully up note, are there any questions? He was actually first, sorry. Okay, the difference between using like a tape-based camera versus the DSLRs. Well, first and foremost, DSLRs have very limited amount of runtime. So like, even to get me talking, you'd have to start and stop every 8 to 10 minutes or whatever the time limit is. What's the time limit on that?
They overheat at a certain...
Yeah, the DSLRs also overheat. Pretty much the DSLRs are good for filmmaking and not really event videography. You have limited times, and the look isn't necessarily good for everything. But the advantages are shallow depth of field, that crisp 24p and HD for under $1,000, depending on the camera. There are many advantages, but they tend to lean towards, you're really locked into, a DSLR can really only do your filmmaking side of things, and not so much any other kind of video shooting. So if you're looking for a versatile camera, the DSLR is not it. If you're looking for beautiful cinematography for kind of a short film or a feature film, it can be ideal. Another downside to the DSLR is the formats that they record to. They record to a highly compressed file. So what happens is you're sacrificing kind of quality for being able to record to compact flash cards or SD cards. It's not an unbeatable situation. Another disadvantage is they have what they call the jello effect. If you do a lot of handheld movements, the image kind of tears apart on a DSLR. That's why that second cell phone monologue was actually shot with the AF100, which that last feature was shot on. It's basically a DSLR with all of those disadvantages removed. But it's a camcorder, and it can do long records. It has the interchangeable lenses. It has that jello effect, the wiggle effect is removed, and it has high data rates. So it's taken all the disadvantages of DSLR and removed them and made a near perfect camera. But yet, I still like the image of the DSLR from the one before it.
Can you tell the price difference?
And the price difference is also a DSLR, a T2i from Canon is $699. The AF100 is $6,000 with no lens. So you're paying for those improvements. But of course, my cameraman bought the camera, so it didn't cost me anything. So I ignore price. Price doesn't mean anything to me when I don't have to pay for it. That's not even true. I traded slave labor of doing web work for the cameraman in exchange for the use of his cameras for most likely the next 11 to 12 years. It sounds like a prison sentence, but it's not. I like the guy. And he doesn't send that much web work to me, so it's really beneficial for me. I'm getting like $100,000 worth of camera gear for about $120 worth of web work. So it really is heavily in my favor. But for the next 10 to 12 years. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that selling in the future, you anticipate to become more regionalized. Has that affected you when you go to construct the bones for the future story?
Not story as much as maybe in revisions. As you get ready to shoot a movie, I will rewrite scenes to cater to the budget or things I have access to. I mean, when it comes to writing the story, usually the story is about people, which doesn't cost anything. But it really depends. I mean, like, you know, if I were to try to do Horrors of War again with World War II big battle scenes, I don't think I could make that movie profitable independently today. So, I mean, yes, it does affect it, but not really in the writing stage as much as maybe the rewriting stage, if that answers your question. You had a question, didn't you?
Yeah. Are there any indie directors that are actually making some money that you like? And also, when Spielberg finally comes out with his true holographic film, will that be the complete death of other things?
Ooh, that's an interesting two-part question. Are there any indie directors currently making money? The movie that has affected me most in the last 3 to 5 years was a movie called Monsters by a British director named Gareth Edwards. It was an utterly fantastic movie. The title is incredibly misleading. It's a science fiction movie, but the monsters themselves are very receded into the background. But what blew my mind was the director himself did every single effect shot. And that affected me so profoundly that every effect shot you saw in the 3 shorts, I did them myself. It was such an inspiration to see how he did it, how easy it was to do, that it's about taking some personal ownership over doing effects work yourself because it's become that accessible. If you didn't notice, it was very hard to notice in the first one, but I did a license plate replace digitally because we had real license plates on the truck in Excellent Art and on the car that the actor drove in the cell phone monologue. I digitally replaced it with a license plate that says sonnyboo, which is kind of retarded because it's way too many letters to fit on a license plate, but no one really noticed, so I don't care. But I mean, I had to digitally motion track a handheld shot that had changed focus, and there was a headlight on and off. It was again, because of learning how to do it once, it took less than 15 minutes to do. The reason you do that is you don't want a real license plate in your movie if you can avoid it because it's somebody's real license plate, it's connected to their actual identity. If, you know, it's almost like identity theft. If somebody wanted to steal something about that, they could. So I prefer to replace it with a fake license plate. And rather than make one or take screws out, because that would be physical exertion that I'm not willing to do if you haven't noticed. And so what I did is I digitally replaced it, which meant I could lazily do it sitting on my butt. But the second half of the thing about Spielberg's holographic movie, that'll never happen with Steven Spielberg. He's the only filmmaker on the planet that still edits on physical film. With Kodak stock dropping, he has bought over $10 million worth of 35mm film stock that he's kept in storage, terrified that film will not exist. That's George Lucas you're talking about. George Lucas's holographic thing is within 5 to 10 years. Personally, I find the 3D thing to be a bit of a gimmick, just like it's always been every time 3D has come out. Unless it's effective to the story, I don't, you know, it's a gimmick. Strangely, I thought Avatar was a decent movie, but the 3D was more distracting than seeing it in 2D, for me. It's entirely preferential. So again, it's a gimmick to try to draw people into spending more money and getting more people to see it in the theater. Because that business model is still working for the studios. A theatrical release of a film is their quickest money from the consumer into their bank account. From the time you buy the ticket and give them that money or swipe that credit card, it's within 8 to 10 days that the studio gets their cut of that. So it is still the quickest, easiest way for a studio to make money is a box office receipt. So that business model is not changing, But in terms of 3D, I can't imagine watching like a Woody Allen movie in 3D, or how that could possibly make it better, no matter how beautiful Scarlett Johansson is. No matter how beautiful she is, in 3D is not really going to make that an enhanced experience for me. So again, it's always going to be about story. So 3D is just a gimmick. If it doesn't help the story, I don't see what the point is.
Grace Kelly in 3D. Ringo Lam and Grace Kelly in Hitchcock's film. It was originally 3D.
Yes, sir.
George Lucas is it.
Yes. It's funny, because the thing about George, who I'm an unofficial expert on, the first movie I ever saw in the theater when I was 5 years old was Star Wars. I'm a huge fan more of how the movies were made than the movies themselves. I don't own a single novelization of one of his movies, but I do own 2.5 bookshelves of how the movies were made, from every country imaginable that has any, like one article different, I want to get it. The thing with George Lucas about being independent is he can independently do things, but he's the head of his own giant corporation at this point. I mean, decisions like Return of the Jedi, which we talked about earlier, the whole decision of Ewoks was literally toy-based, about raising money. Part of the thing with him was a lot of the things that we all love about the original Star Wars movies were decisions that were forced upon him by other people. He didn't have that with the prequels. He made the movies he wanted to make artistically, yet the audience does not like them as much. I don't think he cares one way or the other, because he made the movies he wanted to make. Yes, sir.
I'd like to follow up, speaking of the Guild, which is internet-based web series, which is excellent, and everyone should check that out. I think there's also an internet-based series called Children's Hospital, if you're familiar with that.
No, I've never heard of Children's Hospital.
15-minute shorts, and then Stars picked them up, and now they're on Stars.
Well, that's also a similar thing happened with another web series that went to the Sci-Fi Channel. I can't remember the name though. Was that not the Ghost Hunters one, but it was something else like that. That was a web series. What's that? Maybe, I'm not sure.
They're Roche, the serial. They're maybe 7 minutes long.
Yeah, that's where they started, and then they eventually became a TV series. They got canceled.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate thing. Yeah, we're in an interesting transitional time. I think we're seeing clearly the internet and television, cable television, are all merging into one thing. You're seeing Hulu is a great example of people want to see their TV shows more and more on demand and less when the channel dictates that it's on. You're seeing more of that. You have, a couple years ago, web TV and cable modem. Just the literal language of it is showing a merging of the two. Eventually it's going to all become one thing. Because the LCD TVs and everything, they're computer monitors and televisions all in one. Streaming internet in high definition, everything is merging. How we can use that as opportunities to succeed or get exposure, unless it's a cat chasing its own tail, which I've tried to do, by the way, as a video, not even as a film, just to try to get hits. A 30-second crazy cat video can get 10 million people watching it, whereas that 10-minute or 15-minute short may not. Who's to know why? I believe there is, in the analysis of it, I think that there are tastemakers still. It's almost like a high school mentality of tastemakers, like a website that'll determine this is cool, and then other people will like it. And then they spread that link, like on Facebook and the social networking on Twitter. If one person likes it, it could spread like wildfire. Just ask Charlie Sheen. It seemed to work out really well for him, even though that was really crappy stuff he put out there. But again, in that psychology of it, is somebody
promoted it. It's just the power structure is different. It's not necessarily a studio executive that's making that decision. It's some guy with a very influential website. So everything is changing right now. I can't 100% predict where it's going, but I know that things are changing. Yes, sir.
Large single-screen theaters like a comic theater have been fighting, obviously, cineplexes, TV, video, art venues like that being relevant, in other words, creating the people sitting collectively in the dark room watching movies into the future, and really, what would you like to see in those venues to really enhance it?
For a single screen venue, as I've seen, I predicted it a little too early. Over the last 11 years, I was hoping to get more support from, in Columbus, there's 2 or 3 of those kind of one-screen theaters. It's the Grandview Theater and Studio 35 and the Drexel. I wanted a little more support for indie film, but those people are also under contract from their distributors, how many times a day must they show the films they've booked. They're under contract. Creating that hole to play an independent feature film is cost prohibitive. So, but what's been happening is, as they're getting squeezed by the 30-screen theaters, they are going to more alternative programming. They're showing the latest TV show premieres on the big screen. They're showing the football games, and the independent films, it went from 1 screening every 6 months to a year to 1 screening a month. That's how much more independent film content is not only playing, but how much more it's worth it for those 1-screen independent theaters. You have to carve out a niche. What is the multiplex not doing? So a single-screen theater can really make headway by showing classic films that the big screen isn't, that the big multiplex is not. They could show independent films. They could turn kind of the film festival into almost, without the classiness of how you do it, but if you did just a screening of 45 minutes of short films every other month, kind of like, finding out who makes it to the big festival later, it's becoming this alternate voice. And again, it also plays into the regional aspect. You're going to get more films from the people in the immediate region of a 3-hour radius than you are from across the globe. So to me, that's the answer. And the other thing about it is, even as a single screen theater, again, psychologically, it's that opportunity to, as a community, I mean, that short XLR has absolutely no impact when you watch it on YouTube. Sitting here with a bunch of people, one person laughing spawns other people laughing, it's a more enjoyable experience. Watching it on your little computer or on your cell phone, you're going to see that ending coming a mile away. But sitting here in this dark room, it's harder to see that coming. Movies are larger than life, meaning when you do a close-up of someone, I can assure you, I've been close to the man, all of those actors, their heads are not 18 feet tall, if you can believe that. And so that's larger than life. That's getting closer to someone's face than you can in real life. You're making detail available to you that we can't get in real life. And so that's a magical experience that you can't get anywhere outside of a movie theater. And that's the secret. That's the key to why movie theaters, when VHS came out, box office plummeted for about 3 to 4 years, from about 1980 to about 84. And one movie kind of U-turned it, which was Ghostbusters. It was a comedy. It was seen in a theater by a group of people, and it enhanced the experience greatly. And box office has not really taken the same kind of dip since. Even though home video exploded even bigger, so did box office. Because the secret is still sitting in a dark room with a bunch of strangers. There's nothing like it. It's an experience, and people don't think about it. They just know that it's better to see a movie like that than otherwise. So I don't know if that answered it. Yes, sir.
I had to keep going back to screenwriting, but minus being able to relate to your protagonist and the goal, what do you think makes a great protagonist?
What makes a good protagonist? Even if they can relate to a character in terms of, I think there's several things. The unfortunate thing is the main thing winds up being the intangible, undefinable charisma, usually of the actor playing the part. I mean, studio execs will always think, well, it's Hugh Jackman because he's good looking. I got bad news. Someone as hideously ugly as Paul Giamatti is still a fantastic actor, and those wretchedly horrible bad looks fade away with a great performance. And that also comes from great writing. As to how do you write that, I don't know. I'm not a very good writer, to be quite honest. I'm not a good screenwriter. If I could find screenwriters that wrote exactly what I had in my head better than me, then I would work with them more often, and occasionally I get that opportunity. But what happens is, for me, it becomes more of, when I read it, do I care? I don't know what makes me care, I just feel it. It's like saying, how do you know when you're in love? I have no idea. I wish I could answer that. I'd probably be a better writer and director if I could answer that question. So unfortunately, I'm not. Yes, sir?
When you did the cell phone monologues videos, there was, like, when the guy's walking down the street and he's talking on his cell phone, you can hear everything he's saying really well. And I know there was, I don't think there was a way to put a microphone on top of his head. So,
No, it was a wireless lavalier here, and also a boom mic in the second channel, at least on the first one. They were both on the street. The daytime one or the nighttime one?
the nighttime one was.
Yeah, the nighttime one had both a boom mic and a wireless lav inside of his shirt. And the second one, we didn't even have a sound guy. We just did a wireless lav and that's it.
Do you ever do any, like, after audio, like, people saying the lines?
Oh, looping or ADR. I normally do, but we didn't on this one. The guy who recorded the sound felt so bad because of how horrible the sound was. He went and processed it and spent 2 or 3 days, like solid 12-hour days, fixing that audio and did an exceptional job. That was Eric Ballou, who did phenomenal work. I guess I should kind of explain the concept of the cell phone monologues. That'll be one of the last things I say is, I had this idea of, it's a pseudo web series, but not meant to be, like, they're not connected in any way. I just noticed that I helped a lot of actors videotape their monologues for auditions. And they tend to be like really crappy, simple camcorder against a white wall, and they just perform a monologue. But I was thinking, what a shame, since I know so many really great cameramen with all these DSLRs lying around, why can't these look great? So I talked with a friend of mine, an actor named Mickey Fisher, and we came up with this idea of, let's do a series of monologues that are shot by some of the best cinematographers. And so we started doing it, and I've only got 2 done so far out of about 8. But I'm going to start looking at other directors, and I'm trying to figure out what the future of that's going to be. I may just put it out there for anybody to do cell phone monologues, write their own, direct their own, do whatever you want to do. Just try to make it look as good as possible for an actor doing a monologue. I'm not real big on people doing a monologue and just talking that long for no reason, so I thought the idea of using cell phones is kind of the excuse to make it feel more like a short film than just a monologue. So that's kind of the concept I was going with, and of course, you know, I had the brilliant Greg Sabo shooting mine, so directing these was kind of, I'm in the back seat quite a bit with these, because it's about the actor, you know, performing the monologue, and I'd work with the actors quite a bit, but it was more about cinematography and the actor monologue, and trying to combine those 2 things.
I do have a technical question. On the cell phone monologue you shot with the DSLR, the scene in the theater where it was dark, any idea what the ISO setting was on this?
Oh, well, again, that was Greg's first day even having his AF100. So we didn't know the settings that well yet. So I'm a little surprised, kind of, there was some color desaturation stuff and exposure that we didn't have 100% set right. But it was just, you know, he'd only had the camera for a couple hours. For him, when the excuse was, let's shoot a short film, because I got a real shoot next week and I want to know the camera a little better. So if there's mistakes made for me, it's like, I don't care about you, you're not paying me. They are. So he's using that to learn the camera. So I have no idea what the ISO settings were on it. It's one of my biggest weaknesses is I don't know camera stuff hardly at all. I prefer, for most directors, you're 50% camera, 50% actors. I'm more of a 25-75 guy. I like to have a cinematographer that takes more personal ownership over the image, and I'll take more time with the actors. Again, that's a purely preferential thing, not a right or wrong thing. So a lot of stuff with, you know, once you start talking about lenses and focal lengths, you're going to lose me in about 2 seconds.
There has to be one more thing you want to tell us, and or mention one more director we should be able to look at that we may not know.
one more director everybody should be on the lookout for. I hear good things about that young man, Ridley Scott. I understand we have lots of things to look for. He seems to be going back in time.
I missed that Numbers show.
The show Numbers? I haven't watched that. I mean, I'm actually finding, though, that television is where I'm watching more than movies. HBO and Showtime and FX seem to be producing better, more cinematic material. We'll go a very brief pop culture rant with is, in 1999, The Sopranos kind of changed everything in television. They were shooting a TV show like a movie, cinematography. After that came 24, Lost. Everything started to look cinematic. Battlestar Galactica, everything they started doing now started to look like a feature film everywhere. But the difference is they have a much longer time period to tell a story. They're more like novels. When you do a whole season of television, like The Shield, every year they have 12 to 13 hours to make you care about a character. And again, you have to, if you take 2 steps back and look at the psychology of it, when you have 2 hours to do a feature film, if you kill a character, you've only got an hour and a half invested with them. You could have 2 or 3 years invested with a character on a TV show when they die. And the potency of that is fantastic. So the other name I'll drop is Joss Whedon. He did Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly. He's currently doing The Avengers, which shot in Cleveland. He's a master at that kind of storytelling. He's probably my personal Jesus is Joss Whedon, who I had the fortune of speaking to in 2002 at San Diego Comic-Con. Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, which he took the Guild model, and he was friends with the actress Felicia Day, and that's how he came up with that, was he wanted to test the waters for the internet as a viable output to have a creative property out, and can it reach an audience? And so, and now he's doing The Avengers, probably the ultimate, geek orgasm movie, comic book characters. And I think his future is looking incredibly bright at this point. All right. Thank you.